So first of all, we're just going to take a look at, give you some estimations of the cost of a university education here. Again, I stress that this is just an estimate. It will depend on the school you've chosen to go to, the program that you're interested in, but we thought we'd give you an overall idea of what to expect. So when students come to study in Canada, they are required to have enough money to live and pay for their tuition. What we've done here is we've estimated that the tuition costs usually start around $10,000 per year. All these prices that you see, we're giving you an estimate across the year. Accommodation, we've estimated at about $12,000 a year. And again, this will vary depending on where you decide to go to study. If you're coming to cities like Toronto, Vancouver, or Montreal, it might be a little bit higher because they are busy urban cities. If you go to more rural or smaller parts of Canada, such as Edmonton, Calgary, Moncton, or even Winnipeg, the cost might be a little bit less. Other fees, this sort of relates to any supplementary fees that you might have, so application fees, visa fees, or anything else that you might have at school. Food, we've given basically about $300 a month for food. Now this may vary. For some schools, the cost of food is incorporated in your accommodation, and then in other schools it's actually separate. Books, these are quite a big expense when you come to study here in Canada. I know there are definitely libraries and resources available, and especially nowadays you can find so much information online that you may find that this expense is not as high. Moreover, there are different websites that you can go to, including one of ours called Books for Exchange, where you can buy used books and keep your costs down that way. I know when I was at university, for some of us, as we were international students, one of us bought the books and then we shared it among a couple of us, so that is an option if you want to save some costs. In terms of phone and internet, we're estimating here about $100 a month. I can certainly appreciate as an international student that your phone bills are a little bit higher if you're trying to call home, which is why Skype was the biggest blessing in the world when it came out. It's a great cost-effective way to make sure your phone bills aren't too high. Transportation. Now again, we've estimated here about $1,500 a year. This can vary depending on which city or where you decide to go to study, and it can also vary depending on how many times you decide to go home. I know for students maybe in the U.S. they might be going home a little bit more frequently, but if you live on the other side of the world like Asia or Australia or Africa, it might be maybe once a year. So we've given sort of a lower estimate here. And then in entertainment, obviously while you're here you should enjoy some of the Canadian culture. So we've budgeted that in to give it a ballpark, again, figure of about $30,000 a year. That is quite a lot of money to come for an education here in Canada. So our website, scholarshipscanada.com, is a great resource for you to be able to find some funding to help you pay for your education. If you sign up for an account on Study in Canada, the same username and password will work for Scholarships Canada. So on Scholarships Canada, we have over 24,000 scholarships worth $93 million. I know a lot of people are concerned that are there scholarships there for international students? Well, we have about $71 million worth of scholarships that don't require a type of citizenship. So you may qualify for those opportunities. Moreover, we ask our scholarship providers to let us know if there are opportunities specifically for international students. And we've got about $100,000 worth of awards for international students. One example of this is the current feature scholarship for this month. It's for a graduate fellowship for international students at the University of Lethbridge, which is valued at just under $20,000. Now there are other funding opportunities aside from scholarships, such as FIDA, which is the Canadian International Development Agency. They offer scholarships directly and funding to students coming directly to Canada. We've provided you with the website link, so feel free to look through that. There's also the Natural Sciences and Engineering Research Council of Canada, which sponsors research grants for doctoral studies. So this is more geared towards people that are looking for postgraduate education. And basically the best thing to do is once you're accepted to a school, contact their financial aid office. Ask them. There's no harm in doing that. We work with all those offices and they're more than happy to take your questions. But ask them if there are any opportunities that are available. I know when we do our Finding Scholarships presentation, Karen mentions a friend of hers. She went to Ryerson who was told that there aren't any scholarships for the program she was in, only to find out afterwards that actually there was, and all she needed to do was ask. So there's no harm in it. Nobody will mind if you do. So definitely, if you're looking into schools, once you've been accepted to schools, just ask them and they will be able to give you some answers. The next section we have is visas and permits. So just to start off with, we've got a couple of definitions. A visa is basically a document issued by a country for you to enter that country. This is generally speaking what a lot of students have. So they have a study visa or a student visa so that they're able to come to Canada for the duration of their degree. But for some people, it's not just about coming to study here in Canada. It's about making Canada a second home or choosing to settle here and gain Canadian citizenship. In that case, they would be applying for a PR card, which is basically a permanent residence card. And this is given to a person who's been allowed to live permanently in Canada. You haven't acquired Canadian citizenship yet. Usually you have to do a mandatory stay, like a certain amount of time. It's roughly 3 years. And then you will be given Canadian citizenship. But basically, you're on the pathway to becoming a Canadian citizen. So what exactly do you need to apply for a visa? I know a lot of you had questions about that. And here's a quick checklist we put together. The best resource for you to find the necessary information is Citizenship and Immigration Canada. We've given you the website link, so I would definitely recommend checking that out. And here are just some things to note. Timing. Make sure you check to see how long it takes to process a visa. Make sure you check the deadline so you don't miss anything. The type of visa will depend on your citizenship. It will also depend on whether you'd like a study permit or a temporary residence visa. And you might need to check some provincial guidelines. So if you're looking to study in Quebec, for example, they have a couple of different rules, I think, from other parts of Canada. So make sure you do your research. Also, you should figure out where you submit your application. I know with visas sometimes it requires you mailing it in rather than submitting it online, or you have to fax it. So make sure you have everything in order and you know your final destination. And also you should check if there are any processing fees and that you're aware of the correct ones. Because the last thing you would want is to submit your visa and then be surprised by a fee.
Yeah. Oh, and just to add, sorry, that also make sure to fill out everything that's available there, because often students who apply for visas may have missed a section, and that totally null and voids your application. And you don't want to spend money on an application that was missing a section, and then you need to fill out another one and pay the fees all over again.
And so that sort of leads into our final section of so make sure you know what necessary documents you need for the presentation. Sorry, I'll just go back. So you'll need a proof of acceptance. So somebody asked the question of, do I apply for a visa as soon as my daughter has received her acceptance letter? I guess the answer to that is yes. Because in order to apply for a visa, you have to be accepted from a Canadian university, or sorry, a Canadian school. You need a proof of identity. So that's usually a valid passport or a travel ID. You need to send in a recent 2 passport-sized pictures. I know my mom carries passport-sized pictures of me and my sister when we were 10. Those don't quite work as recent passport pictures, so you might need to go in and get some pictures done. You need to provide proof of financial support. So that's what I covered earlier, that to show that you are able to afford your education here. And oftentimes you might need a letter of explanation, so your intention of why you're choosing to come to study in Canada. In some cases, there are some additional documents. So you might be asked for medical information. You might also be asked for security information. So always make sure that you do your homework. And as Karen said, make sure that you check your application, make sure that you proofread your application, and make sure that you have everything that you need before submitting it. Because as she said, you don't want to have to repay a processing fee. It can take quite some time. So you also want to make sure you have everything correct before you submit it. So some people ask, when am I eligible to apply for a visa? And I know I had a couple of questions in the questions as well. And basically, study permits are required to be eligible to study in Canada. So you definitely need one of them to be able to come to study here. You must be accepted by a school in Canada. So that's why that letter of acceptance is so important. You also have to prove that you have enough money for tuition fees, living expenses, and return transportation. So they want to make sure that if you're coming to study here in Canada, that you're able to take care of yourself while you're here. You may not need a study permit for a course that is less than 6 months. However, you have to complete your course within the period that's authorized. So oftentimes visas will have certain parameters. So they'll have an expiry date. If you've shown that you've been accepted to a program that lasts for 4 years, your visa may be valid for those 4 years. Your visa is usually, it has some basic details. So it will tell you which institution you can study at, if you're at all during the duration of your stay, whether you need a report for a medical exam or observation or treatment, if your travel within Canada is restricted, so if maybe you only have to stay at the school that you're at, and when you must leave Canada. If you want to change anything, you have to submit an application form. Again, we've given you a link. Okay, and that wraps up our section on visas. Again, if you have any questions, I would definitely recommend going to the Citizenship and Immigration website. What I'm going to do is pass it over to Deb, who is from CultureWorks, which is an organization that allows you to do ESL programs and get conditional acceptance into certain universities. I'll allow her to explain a little bit more, but she'll basically take you through the English language requirements here in Canada.